To the Point with Michael Williams.
A summary of the Mueller report shows no collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians. It says when it comes to obstruction, the report does not conclude the president committed a crime. It also does not exonerate him, but the president is claiming a victory. Now the question is, how might this all play out in Florida politics? President Trump visits the Glades as Republicans and Democrats ask for more money to restore the Everglades. Hello and good morning. I'm Tori Dunnan in for Michael Williams. It has been a busy week. 1 week ago, the summary of the Mueller report was released, and the political implications of it are still being hashed out. At the end of the week, the president visited the Glades to talk about water. And joining me to talk about that and much more, we have a Democrat and a Republican, Michael Barnett, the chairman of the Palm Beach County Republican Party, and Scott Holtz, a precinct captain and member of the Democratic Party Executive Committee right here in Palm Beach County. Thank you both for coming in. So, wow, a lot to talk about, right?
Absolutely.
Right, let's start with the Mueller report and how this might play out in Florida politics, especially with an election looming.
Well, to be honest, we don't really know yet what the Mueller report says, because nobody except for Attorney General Barr and maybe a couple other people at the Department of Justice have seen it yet. All we know about is the 4-page summary of a 300-page plus document that Attorney General Barr has released. So it's going to be hard for us to judge the impact of that in Florida politics because we don't yet know what it's going to say. And frankly, the politics right now is revolving around the timing of the release of this report, the manner in which it's released, and how much Congress and the American people can learn about it in the coming days.
What's your take on it?
Well, we do know that, as you said, there is no collusion. The president has been pretty much cleared of any wrongdoing, any obstruction of justice, and the Democrats are at risk of overplaying their hand. We really don't have a hand here. We've been put through 22 months of an investigation of what turned out to be a wild goose chase, and the Democrats are reasonable-minded. They'll go ahead and accept the findings as they are after the redactions have been made by the White House and released to the public. But we don't want to see happen to them what happened to the Republicans in 1998 when they pushed impeachment of the president and what basically amounted to nothing but sex. The American people will hold them accountable if they push this too far.
Do you think the report and what we know so far is going to change voters' views of the president?
I don't think so, because frankly, I think the vast majority of people here in Florida and across the country have already made up their mind about how they feel about this president one way or the other. However, I do have to disagree a little bit with the characterization of, one, the fact that this report has completely exonerated the president. I know that's what the White House would have us believe. However, the fact is, in Attorney General Barr's summary itself, the Attorney General said, while the report does not rise to the level of presenting criminal charges against the president, it also does not exonerate him. And also, to call this a wild goose chase after 30-plus indictments and investigations of people who either worked for the president or worked closely with the campaign or were people affiliated with the Russian government, I don't think we had a wild goose chase here. And mind you, the jury is still out on another major issue besides the Russian collusion, which is the question of obstruction of justice. But if this sounds like it's a little confusing and convoluted, it is. And I'd have to agree that, unfortunately, the political import of that in today's 24-hour news cycle and soundbite climate makes it so that if the Democrats do try to overplay this, I think they're going to lose because, unfortunately, it wasn't the overwhelming victory with a message that we would have liked to have seen.
Kind of sticking to that topic a little bit is we are expecting to hear the details, but that's not going to be for weeks. I mean, who knows exactly, but there will be continued reporting on the subject. So does that help or hurt the president, help Democrats? What do you make of it?
This will help the president. We have reasonable Democrats who are already calling for people like Beto O'Rourke and Adam Schiff who just won't let this issue go. They're calling on them to apologize to the president for suggesting that he committed treason, when there was no treason committed. There was no obstruction of justice. There was no collusion with the Russian government on the part of the president. I think they're taking a big risk, and as a Republican, I actually kind of hope they do because it'll backfire in their faces. It'll be a big victory for the president in November 2020. I'd rather see the president run on his amazing record. His approval ratings are steady 45%, and his handling of the economy is at about 57% approval. That's what we want to focus on, not this witch hunt that blew up in everybody's faces. It was proven to be a nothing burger, as Van Jones suggested months and months and months ago. It's over. It's done. Mueller's report was released. The Democrats invested so much in this investigation, which took 22 months, how many millions of dollars were spent, how many FBI agents and lawyers had to waste their time on investigating something that turned out to be absolutely nothing.
Is your take that the details that might be released, whatever they might be, won't change things?
I don't think so, not at all.
And I say, how can you make that a determination until we actually know what those details are? I think at the end of the day, looking at this as some sort of wasted exercise is totally wrong, because the fact of the matter is there was clearly more than enough evidence to suggest that there was Russian interference or attempted interference in our election in 2016. And regardless of whether or not the president ultimately was involved in that interference, and if this report has cleared him, then we'll have to accept that as a fait accompli and that he wasn't. Great. That just means the president isn't a traitor. As an American, let alone as a Democrat, I think that's fantastic. But the bottom line is there still needed to be an investigation into exactly how this interference was attempted, was it successful, and who, if anybody, in the United States helped perpetrate it. And that's exactly what this investigation has uncovered.
And I hope it uncovers exactly what the DNC's role and the Clinton campaign's role was in funding this false dossier that was used to obtain FISA warrants that led to spying on American citizens in support of this investigation that led to nothing.
Sounds like we could debate this one for some time. Another topic I do want to touch on is President Trump visited the Everglades on Friday, looking at Lake Okeechobee and also the Everglades Restoration Project. This is a huge topic in our area, and the White House has been touting the fact that this points to all levels of government working together. But both Republicans and Democrats have criticized that there really hasn't been enough money that's been allocated for the project. What do you make of this in the election and the topic in general and how it's being portrayed?
Well, I think it's going to help the Democrats in the election. The fact of the matter is that the Republicans have been in control of Congress for both houses of Congress for the first 2 years of the Trump administration. With the Republican president, the fact of the matter is that if this problem isn't being properly addressed, the Democrats will be able to lay this directly at the feet of the Republicans, and in particular at the feet of President Trump. And this is going to strike directly in the heart of Trump country. I mean, the central part of our state, the counties around Lake Okeechobee, are areas that are going to heavily vote Republican. However, if they feel like their Republican representatives, Representative Mast and the president, aren't doing enough to adequately address this problem, they will take it out on them at the ballot box.
When the president was making the visit, you had the president as well as the governor and local leaders, even from mayors in the cities that this really impacts, talking about how until the president was in office, there hadn't been enough focus on this issue, but that it has changed. So you're hearing both sides of the argument.
Exactly right. The president's visit shows that there's bipartisan support addressing this issue. There's praise from Democrats for the president for being in this area, bringing attention to a very dire situation. There are people in the Glades area that have been all but forgotten by the rest of us in Palm Beach County, and their concerns, their fellow citizens of ours, they need to be addressed. And the president was here, he's taking care of this, and he's bringing attention to it. I think it's going to help Republicans. It shouldn't be a political issue.
Well, I couldn't agree more. It shouldn't be a political issue, but the idea that the president and the Republicans are somehow coming in now and recognizing that this is a problem is a bit disingenuous, because Everglades restoration and the problem of restoring southern flow south of Lake Okeechobee and cleaning the water coming in and out of Lake Okeechobee has been a problem for well over 2 decades. The fact of the matter is that until people who live in reliably Republican districts, like in Brian Mast's district along the St. Lucie estuary, complained and were directly affected by the algae blooms in the last couple of years, there had been no real action on the part of the Republicans, and there hadn't been this attention paid. Now suddenly that their constituents, meanwhile people in the Glades communities, which typically vote Democratic here in Palm Beach County, have been suffering for decades, have received no attention from Republicans. Suddenly now they're trying to swoop in like white knights, and yet the fact of the matter is that it's important for people to remember that this problem has been going on for a long time. Democrats have been trying to address this problem, but in a Republican-controlled legislature in Tallahassee, a Republican-dominated Congress in Washington, and a Republican in the White House until very recently, it's been difficult. And frankly, they need to know who to lay to blame for that.
We do need to address another topic. There's just a long list we could go through, right? But let's talk a little bit about in the presidential campaign and how this is going to all play out. The president is asking a federal appeals court to strike down the entire Affordable Care Act. This is a big topic for voters. I know that no one has a crystal ball, but presidential election.
Well, this is going to help the president if he can attain a victory in the courts. That was a big campaign promise, to strike down the Affordable Care Act, or at least to have portions of it removed, and he worked through executive order to take out the teeth. The mandate, the individual mandate, and Americans have seen the results in their wallets and their pocketbooks, and the smaller tax bill that they've had to pay. I think just like the wall, this is a very important part of the president's agenda, and it's a black mark on this country's history that we've been forced to pay for a service that, for the most part, most Americans don't want or could easily afford to pay for on their own in a great deal. We need to see this law stricken down in its entirety.
To respond to that a little bit, do you think Republicans are concerned at all that Democrats used health care as an issue and they were able to win control of the House? You could respond first and then perhaps you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, the president tried this before the midterm election, and look what happened. The Democrats won a big majority and took back control of the House of Representatives. I think it's exactly what we're seeing now. It's the president the president is not doing this for the betterment of the American people. He's doing this to talk directly to the hardcore, anti-Obama, still want to destroy the Obama legacy part of his base, which is a substantial portion of his base, and he's going to keep throwing them red meat, because without his base, there's nobody left. The president's approval ratings have always reflected the fact that he's got his base and maybe a few voters outside of that. So he's going to keep doing whatever he can to keep them happy.
Do you feel like it's a threat to take on the issue at all?
No, it's exactly what the American people need. This law was an abomination from the very beginning. It's a major intrusion on Americans' freedom, and I hope he has success in the courts. If not, he needs to take whatever action he can through the executive order process to remove whatever remains of the bill that he can.
So really quick, out of all the issues we talked about, which one is going to play biggest?
Of these issues? In Florida, healthcare.
Healthcare, but I would like to see the Democrats keep pushing this Russian collusion nonsense, like Adam Schiff and Beto O'Rourke, who just won't seem to let it go. They're like a bride that was left at the altar wondering what happened. If they keep pushing it, I think the American people are going to get sick of it. And it'll be a big battle in November, but we'll prevail.
All right, thank you so much, both of you, for coming in. I'm sure we'll be talking a lot about this in the months to come. And coming up, our roundtable takes on those issues and much more. Stay with us. Now for our roundtable with Mariana Mancuso, a Republican political strategist and author of PoliticalHype.com, a blog which is aimed at conservative millennials, and News Channel 5 political analyst Brian Crowley. A lot to talk about this week.
A lot going on.
And if you saw the beginning of the show, you know that as well. All right, so let's start with the latest news that we have to talk about and the president's trip to the Glades. What did we learn from that?
We learned that what goes on at the lake continues to be controversial. The president's budget, the state had asked for $200 million this year. The president's budget offered up $67 million. I think he may have indicated that he's willing to change that. But that's sort of been what's been going on for decades. The state asks for a lot of money, the federal government gives it very little, and also you have controversy about, you know, how high the lake should be. It's dividing up folks living in the Treasure Coast versus folks living in Palm Beach County. I mean, it's a huge issue, and everybody tends to want to have their picture taken around the lake, but ultimately not a lot gets done year after year.
I think that it's great that we saw the president come to Lake Okeechobee to shine a spotlight on this. This is a problem that we have time and time again, and this is the first time after the election cycle that we've seen it continue to be a spotlight shown on it, and to see that people are actually paying attention and wanting to make it work and find, you know, solutions. Although, as Brian pointed out, he's only granted $63 million, which is a little troubling considering we're requesting $200 million and we need a little bit more.
We know it's going to be a big issue in the election to at least people in our area. How do you expect it to play out, though?
Well, the problem with it being a big issue in our area is recently the Corps of Engineers, which controls the depth of Lake Okeechobee, decided to lower the water. And now and as a result of doing that, we found the real political division between the Treasure Coast and Palm Beach County. The Treasure Coast wants the water lowered to prevent the algae blooms. Palm Beach County wants the water higher because a few years ago, one city, West Palm Beach, almost ran out of water. And so they're saying you're lowering the lake too much. So those are the kinds of political divisions that you start having over this issue. And when you look all around the state and everybody that's impacted by the lake and the aquifers and everything else that's involved, there are all these little fiefdoms all around the state, and there's not a lot of unity on what needs to be done.
Let's switch gears and talk about the Mueller report. We've been talking about it for so long. If you look into a crystal ball, will we be talking about it come election time?
Well, I'll give you a short-term answer. We haven't seen the report yet. We've seen the 4-page summary. I read the 4-page summary. I suspect a lot of people talking about it have not read the 4-page summary. You know, the rumors about the actual report range anywhere from 300 to 1,000 pages. Whatever it is, I'm sure it's quite large. Until we actually see the report, I think the conversation will continue. From the Republican vantage point, it's a good talking point for hammering Democrats. Some of the Democrats are not going to let go until they see the entire report. You know, so I mean, I can understand where the Republicans think this is a great talking point because they think that the Democrats just dragged Trump into the mud.
Well, to Brian's point, we haven't seen the report, and I do agree that the report should be released. I think that once it's released, though, we need to just let it go and move on, because otherwise the Democrats are really walking a fine line between providing transparency to the American public and then looking like they're just throwing a public temper tantrum, and that's going to be very problematic as we head into 2020, and we're going to want to focus more on issues than just trying to throw things at the Trump administration and the president. After all, he's just starting to look like the Teflon Don. Nothing seems to stick.
Let's talk a little bit about the last issue here that I want to go over. The former Democratic candidate for governor, Andrew Gillum, announced that he basically wants to register at least 1 million voters to turn Florida blue.
Well, I mean, it's certainly a worthy endeavor. It would be incredible if he actually was able to register 1 million voters. Then the question becomes, if he succeeds at that, what percentage of those voters would actually turn out to vote? But let's pretend only 1/3 of those voters show up and you get 300,000 people showing at the polls. If they're all Democrats or no party voters who want to vote for Democrats, obviously it could have an enormous impact in a state where elections are won by half a percentage point in statewide races. And while it's usually a slightly larger gap in presidential races, let's not forget that the 2000 election was won by 537 votes. So sure, if Andrew Gillum can pull off registering a significant number of voters who actually showing out the polls, he will have done a great deal to help the Democratic Party, and Republicans should be keeping an eye on him.
What's a realistic number? I mean,
I think it's great. I think trying to have this lofty goal, I'm all for creating big lofty goals, you know, shoot for the stars and hopefully you'll hit it. But the thing is that this is another example of Andrew Gillum trying to remain relevant in the space, and hopefully he can. But again, at the end of the day, as Brian pointed out, just because you register 1 million voters does not mean that those 1 million voters are going to turn out to the polls. But conversely, I would also hope that the Republicans are taking note and doing the same voter registration drive as well across the state, because this is going to be a very battleground state, even though it was won by Trump. But remember, Republicans in Florida only have a 1.2% lead over the Democrats, so this really could be anybody's race if they do it right.
Gotcha. And as far as targeting who they're trying to register, I mean, would it be millennials? Would it be?
Hopefully people that vote.
Right. Well, I mean, you know, while baby boomers haven't died off yet, you know, they're getting older, and older voters certainly vote in larger numbers than younger voters. But, you know, as you're looking down the road towards the future, sure, I think they should make a big effort to getting people, say, 40 and under to register to vote.
All right, I appreciate you both. We'll have much more and be back in just a minute. Now time for the closing comments, beginning with the Mancuso moment.
Miami may have lost the Democratic convention for the presidential race. However, they have raised the bar because they'll be hosting the first Democratic presidential debate in June, and I can't even believe we're talking about this. I mean, it's coming up very, very quickly. You know, we're already 11 months away from the New Hampshire primary, so people are already looking to this, and we have so many candidates that'll be converging on Miami, and they'll actually be able to debate as long as they reach 1% polling nationally, or they poll 1% in 3 of the beginning states in 3 polls, or if they have 65,000 individual donors. So really anybody could actually go to the stage in Miami and debate in June.
Okay.
Well, I, for one, am still outraged that Milwaukee got the convention instead of Florida. I mean, after all, we are the Sunshine State. We can guarantee sunshine. and maybe a hurricane to go with it, so I'm a little disappointed in that. Yes, I think people need to understand that, you know, the presidential election may seem like it's really far away, but it's underway, it's going, and Democrats in particular are going to wind up with as many as 20 candidates to choose from, so they should start paying attention when we get that first big June debate.
All right, thank you for spending time with us on today's To The Point. If you'd like to send us your comments about today's broadcast, head to WPTV.com and click on the To The Point page, and you'll see a section to send us your views. Enjoy the rest of your day.